Naomi Richards lay in the narrow bed, her body covered by a thin white sheet that might as well have been a burial shroud. From the waist down she felt nothing. No pain, no tingling, no warmth. Just an endless void where her legs used to be. The doctors said the spinal injury was severe. They used words like extensive damage, and long recovery, and may never walk again. But those words hurt less than watching her husband pack his duffel bag. Trevor stood by the small closet, methodically folding the few shirts he'd left in her room during the first week after the accident. That was 3 weeks ago. 3 weeks since a car had plowed into her on Mercy Street and drove away, leaving her bleeding on the wet pavement. 3 weeks since her life had shattered into a million pieces. "You're really doing this?" Naomi's voice came out as a whisper. Her throat was raw from screaming earlier, from begging him to stay, from asking him how he could abandon her when she needed him most. Trevor didn't look at her. His jaw was set in that stubborn way she used to find attractive back when they were young and in love. Back before 10 years of marriage had turned him into a stranger. "I can't do this, Naomi. I can't spend the rest of my life taking care of someone who can't even walk." The words sliced through her chest like a knife. "The doctor said I might recover. It could take time, but there's a chance." Chance. He zipped the bag with a sharp, final sound. "I need certainty. I have a career to think about. And the kids need a stable home. I'm their mother. You're an invalid." He said it so casually, like he was commenting on the weather. "How are you going to take care of Terrence and Nia when you can't even get out of bed? They need someone who can actually parent them." Tears streamed down Naomi's face. She wanted to scream, to throw something, to make him understand the depth of his cruelty. But her arms were weak from weeks in bed, and her spirit was even weaker. "Please, Trevor. Please don't take my babies from me." He finally looked at her then, and what she saw in his eyes made her blood run cold. There was no love there. No compassion. No regret. Just cold, calculated indifference. "My lawyer will be in touch about the divorce. You'll get some money, enough for a care facility. But I'm getting full custody. No judge will give kids to a woman who can't walk. You're a monster." "No." He picked up his bag and walked toward the door. "I'm a realist. I can't sacrifice my entire life because you were stupid enough to walk home alone at night." He left without saying goodbye. The door clicked shut behind him with a soft, terrible finality. Naomi stared at the ceiling and let the sobs rack her broken body. Through the window she could see the parking lot below. Trevor appeared moments later, walking briskly to his BMW. But he wasn't alone. A woman with long blonde hair was waiting by the passenger side. She wore a red dress that Naomi recognized from Trevor's office party 6 months ago. Brittany something. His co-worker. They kissed before getting into the car. A long, passionate kiss that made everything crystal clear. He hadn't left her because she was paralyzed. He'd been waiting for an excuse to leave. The accident had just given him one that made him look less like the villain. Naomi watched the BMW drive away, taking her husband, her dignity, and her future with it. She thought about Terrence and Nia, her 8-year-old twins, and how confused they must be. She thought about the house she'd helped buy with her salary from the accounting firm where she'd worked for 6 years. She thought about the life she'd built so carefully, so lovingly. All of it was gone now. A nurse came in to check her vitals. She was a kind woman with gentle hands and a soft voice. "How are you feeling, Mrs. Richards?" Naomi couldn't answer. How could she explain that she was feeling everything and nothing all at once? That her heart was breaking while her legs remained dead and useless? The nurse squeezed her hand. "I know it's hard right now, but you're stronger than you think. I've seen people recover from injuries like yours. It takes time and work, but it's possible." "What's the point?" Naomi whispered. "I have nothing to recover for." "You have yourself," the nurse said simply. "That's always enough." But as the night closed in around her and the hospital settled into its usual nighttime quiet, Naomi didn't believe that. She was 32 years old, paralyzed, abandoned, and alone. Her parents had died in a house fire when she was 25. She had no siblings, no close friends who would risk their own lives to take care of her long-term. Trevor had made sure to isolate her from her college friends over the years, claiming they were bad influences. She was truly, completely alone. And yet, somewhere in the darkest part of that longest night, something shifted inside her. It wasn't hope, not yet. It was something smaller and harder. Something that tasted like anger and felt like resolve. If Trevor thought she would just disappear quietly into some forgotten care facility, he was wrong. If he thought he could steal her children and her life without consequences, he was wrong. And if he thought she would stay broken forever, he was very, very wrong. Naomi couldn't feel her legs, but she could feel rage. And right now, that would have to be enough to keep her alive. The accident played on a loop in Naomi's mind during the endless hours she lay in the hospital bed. Every detail was burned into her memory with the clarity that only trauma can bring. It had been October 15th, exactly 10 years since she'd married Trevor in a small ceremony at the courthouse. She'd wanted something bigger, but he'd convinced her that saving money was more important. Looking back now, she realized he'd never really wanted to celebrate being married to her. That evening, she'd left work early from the accounting firm, excited despite Trevor's text saying he had to work late. Again. It was the third anniversary in a row he'd missed, but Naomi had convinced herself that his dedication to his sales job was for their family's benefit. She'd stopped at the small grocery store on Mercy Street, buying ingredients for Trevor's favorite meal, thinking she'd surprise him with a late dinner when he got home. Steak, asparagus, those fancy potatoes he liked. She'd spent nearly $80 she shouldn't have, but it was their anniversary. The sun had already set by the time she left the store. Mercy Street was poorly lit, with just a few street lamps scattered along the 3 blocks between the store and the bus stop. Naomi had walked that route hundreds of times. She knew every crack in the sidewalk, every storefront, every shortcut. She'd been thinking about Trevor as she walked, wondering why he'd seemed so distant lately. He barely touched her anymore. He spent more time on his phone than talking to her. And just last week, she'd found a charge on their credit card statement for a hotel room she knew nothing about. When she'd asked him about it, he'd gotten angry, said it was for a client meeting, and accused her of not trusting him. Maybe that's why she didn't notice the car right away. It came from behind her, engine roaring as it accelerated. Naomi had turned, caught in the headlights like a deer, and saw the dark sedan bearing down on her. She tried to jump out of the way, but there wasn't time. The impact had been explosive. She remembered flying through the air, the grocery bag bursting open, vegetables scattering across the street. She remembered hitting the ground hard enough to knock the air from her lungs. And she remembered lying there, unable to move, watching the car's taillights disappear around the corner without even slowing down. Pain had come in waves. Her back screamed. Her head throbbed. But worst was the terrible, cold realization that she couldn't feel her legs. She tried to move them, to sit up, to crawl to the sidewalk. Nothing worked. A man had found her 10 minutes later. He'd called 911, stayed with her, held her hand while she cried. She never got his name. The paramedics had been efficient and professional. They'd stabilized her spine, loaded her onto a stretcher, and rushed her to County General. In the ambulance, one of them had gently told her not to try to move. "You've got a serious spinal injury, ma'am. Just stay still and let us do our job." At the hospital, everything had become a blur of tests and procedures. CAT scans, MRIs, X-rays. Doctors with grave faces had explained that her spine was damaged at the L1-L2 level. Bone fragments had compressed her spinal cord. They'd done emergency surgery to relieve the pressure, but the damage was extensive. She might never walk again. Trevor had arrived at the hospital 3 hours after the accident. 3 hours. The police had called him immediately, but he'd taken his time. He'd shown up wearing the same clothes he'd worn to work that morning, smelling like cologne and lies. "Thank God you're okay," he'd said, but his eyes had been cold. Naomi had been too drugged and shocked to question it then. She'd just been grateful he was there. She'd needed him so badly in that moment. But now, lying in her hospital bed 3 weeks later, she replayed every moment and saw the truth she'd been too naive to see before. Trevor hadn't been working late on their anniversary. He'd been with Brittany. And when he'd gotten the call about her accident, he hadn't rushed to her side. He'd probably finished whatever he was doing first. Maybe he'd even discussed it with Brittany. Maybe they'd talked about what this meant for their affair. Naomi thought about her mother-in-law, Gloria, who had visited exactly once. The woman had stood at the foot of the bed, looked at Naomi's paralyzed legs and said, "Such a shame. You were always so clumsy though." Clumsy. As if Naomi had caused the accident herself. As if she'd walked into traffic on purpose. But there was something in Gloria's eyes that day. Something that looked almost like guilt. Or knowledge. She'd left quickly, claiming she needed to help Trevor with the children, and hadn't returned. The police investigation had gone nowhere. Detective Morrison had been apologetic but clear. "Without a license plate or a good description of the vehicle, we don't have much to go on. The surveillance cameras on that street were broken. We'll keep the case open, but honestly, Mrs. Richards, hit and runs like this rarely get solved unless someone comes forward." No one had come forward. Naomi stared out the window at the gray November sky. Somewhere out there, the person who'd run her down was living their life without consequences. And somewhere closer, Trevor was planning a future with Brittany, using Naomi's paralysis as his ticket to freedom. The nurse who'd been kind to her the night Trevor left came in with lunch. Her name tag said Yvonne. "You need to eat, honey," Yvonne said, setting the tray on the bedside table. "I know you don't feel like it, but your body needs fuel to heal." "Will I heal?" Naomi asked. "Really?" Yvonne sat on the edge of the bed. "I've been a nurse for 23 years. I've seen miracles. I've seen people walk again after doctors said they never would. But I've also seen people give up before they even try. The difference isn't always in the injury. It's in the will. My husband left me. I know, baby. I saw him leave." Yvonne's face hardened. "And I saw that woman waiting for him in the parking lot. Men like that aren't worth your tears. He took my children. Then you get strong enough to fight for them. You think any judge wants to give full custody to a man who abandoned his wife in a hospital bed? You document everything. You recover. And you show the world what you're made of." Naomi felt something crack open inside her chest. Not hope, not yet. But possibility. How long will it take? Depends on you. Could be a year. Could be 5. Could be never if you don't fight. But if you want it bad enough, if you're willing to hurt and fail and get back up every single day, then I believe you can do it. What if I can't? Then you can't. But you'll know you tried. And that's better than lying here wondering what if. Yvonne stood up and adjusted the bed so Naomi could reach the tray more easily. "Now eat. Small steps, Mrs. Richards. Small steps." After Yvonne left, Naomi picked up the plastic fork and forced herself to take a bite of the bland mashed potatoes. They tasted like nothing, but she kept eating. Because Yvonne was right. She needed to fuel her body. She needed to get strong. And when she was strong enough, she was going to find out exactly what had happened on Mercy Street. She was going to uncover every lie Trevor had told her. And she was going to make sure that everyone who'd helped destroy her life paid for it. Trevor thought she was broken. He thought she was done. He had no idea what he'd created when he walked out that door. The divorce papers arrived on a cold December morning, delivered by a process server who looked embarrassed to be there. Naomi signed them with shaking hands, her eyes scanning the brutal terms. Trevor was requesting full custody of Terrence and Nia, claiming Naomi was physically incapable of providing appropriate care. He was also filing for the house, the savings account, and even her car, arguing that she wouldn't be able to drive it anyway. He was leaving her with nothing. Her lawyer, a tired-looking public defender named Ronald Hughes, had been honest with her. "Mrs. Richards, I'm going to level with you. Your husband has a strong case for custody. You're currently unable to walk, you have no income since you can't work, and you're still in the hospital with no clear discharge plan. Unless you can show significant improvement in your condition and secure stable housing, the court will likely grant his request." "He abandoned me," Naomi said, her voice breaking. "He left me in a hospital bed 3 weeks after I was paralyzed. How is that not relevant?" "It is relevant and we'll bring it up. But the court's primary concern is the welfare of the children. And right now, your husband can provide them with a stable home, food, education, and full-time care. You can't." The truth of it had crushed her. "So I just lose my children? You'll likely get visitation rights. And if your condition improves, you can petition to modify the custody arrangement. But that could take years. Years. Naomi's babies would be grown by then." The hospital discharged her 2 weeks later. She had nowhere to go. Trevor had already sold the house, claiming they needed to split the assets quickly. Naomi suspected he'd sold it for below market value to a friend, planning to split the difference under the table, but she had no way to prove it. With the small settlement from the divorce, just $18,000, Naomi was transferred to Riverside Rehabilitation Center, a state-funded facility that smelled like boiled cabbage and regret. Her room was barely large enough for the narrow bed and wheelchair. The walls were painted a depressing shade of beige, and the single window looked out onto a parking lot. She shared a bathroom with 3 other residents, all of them elderly stroke victims who could barely speak. Most nights, Naomi lay awake listening to someone crying down the hall, wondering if that would eventually be her. The physical therapy sessions started immediately. Her therapist was a tall black woman named Dr. Patricia Owens, who had the build of a former athlete and eyes that saw right through any excuse. "You're young," Patricia said on their first day, studying Naomi's chart. 32 spinal compression at L1 L2, some nerve damage but not complete severance. "You've got a fighting chance, Naomi. But it's going to hurt. It's going to take everything you have. Are you ready for that?" Naomi thought about Terrence and Nia, who she hadn't seen in 6 weeks. Trevor claimed they were adjusting and that seeing her would upset them. I'll do whatever it takes. Good. Because I don't waste my time on quitters. The first month was hell. Patricia pushed her harder than Naomi thought possible. They started with simple exercises, trying to engage the muscles in her legs that still had some nerve connection. Naomi would lie on her back, Patricia's hands on her thigh, and try to tighten the muscle. Feel it, Patricia would say. Your brain knows how to do this. You just have to rebuild the pathway. Most days nothing happened. Naomi would strain and sweat and cry with frustration, and her leg would just lie there, dead and useless. But Patricia never let her give up. Again, she'd say, we go until we see something. On the 33rd day, Naomi's quadricep twitched. It was barely visible, just a tiny flutter under the skin, but Patricia saw it. There, she shouted, her face breaking into a huge smile. That's it. That's the beginning. Naomi had started sobbing then, overwhelmed by the first sign of progress. It was such a small thing, a twitch that lasted less than a second. But it was proof that she wasn't completely lost. Proof that maybe, just maybe, she could come back from this. The divorce was finalized in February. Naomi wasn't required to appear in court. Her lawyer handled everything remotely. Trevor got full custody. The judge granted Naomi supervised visitation rights, 2 hours every other Sunday, contingent on her finding appropriate transportation to and from the meeting location. Since Naomi couldn't drive and could barely afford the facility where she was living, those visits became nearly impossible. In the entire first year after the accident, she saw her children exactly 4 times. Each visit broke her heart a little more. Terrence had been cold to her, clearly influenced by whatever Trevor was telling him. Dad says you're sick and can't take care of us anymore, her son said during their second visit, not meeting her eyes. I'm getting better, Naomi had promised, reaching for his hand. He pulled away. Nia was younger and more open, crawling into Naomi's lap in the wheelchair and crying. I miss you, Mommy. Why don't you come home? I will, baby. I promise. Mommy just needs some time to get strong again. But Trevor had been there too, watching from across the room with his arms folded, Brittany by his side. The message was clear. This was their family now. Naomi was just a visitor. Work became her only salvation. Patricia helped her get set up with a remote data entry position through a company that hired disabled workers. It didn't pay much, just $12 an hour, but it was something. Naomi worked during every free moment, saving every penny she could. She also started investigating the accident. Late at night, when the facility was quiet and the pain medication made it hard to sleep anyway, Naomi would use her laptop to search through police databases she could access with her old credentials from the accounting firm. She looked up hit-and-run reports from October 15th. She studied maps of Mercy Street. She reached out to the store owner where she bought the groceries, asking if he remembered anything about that night. He didn't? Sorry, miss. We get hundreds of customers. I wish I could help. But Naomi didn't give up. She joined online forums for hit-and-run victims, hoping someone might have information. She filed Freedom of Information requests for any surveillance footage from businesses along her route that night. Most were denied or showed nothing useful. Except one. 3 months into her investigation, she received footage from a dry cleaning business 2 blocks from where she'd been hit. The camera angle was bad, mostly showing the shop's entrance, but in the far corner of the frame, you could see part of the street. At 8:47 p.m. on October 15th, a dark sedan appeared in the frame for just 3 seconds. It was speeding, moving too fast for the residential street. Naomi watched it over and over, zooming in until the image became pixelated. She couldn't see the license plate, but she could see something else. A distinctive dent in the rear passenger side door. She'd seen that dent before. She was sure of it. But where? Naomi saved the footage to her hard drive and kept searching. She printed out a still image of the car and kept it pinned above her bed, staring at it during her therapy sessions when the pain got too intense. That the car that hit you? Patricia asked one day, noticing the photo. Maybe. I can't prove it yet. Why does it matter? Even if you find them, it won't change what happened to you. Naomi looked up at her therapist, her jaw set. Because somebody did this to me and they drove away like I was nothing. They took everything from me. And I want to know who. Patricia studied her for a long moment, then nodded. Okay. Then let's work harder. Because you can't chase anyone down if you can't walk. By the end of the first year, Naomi could feel sensations in both legs. Not normal sensation, but a tingling awareness that told her when Patricia touched her skin or moved her feet. It was progress. Slow, painful progress, but progress nonetheless. She'd also saved $4,000 from her data entry job. It wasn't much, but it was a start. And late at night, when the despair threatened to swallow her whole, Naomi would look at that grainy photo of the car with the dented door and promise herself that one day she would find out the truth. She would walk again. She would get her children back. And she would make everyone who'd abandoned her regret it for the rest of their lives. 2 years after the accident, on a freezing January morning, Naomi stood for the first time. It wasn't graceful. It wasn't triumphant. It was 10 seconds of shaking, trembling effort, with Patricia's strong arms supporting most of her weight and leg braces holding her upright. Every muscle in her body screamed. Sweat poured down her face. Her legs felt like they might snap under the strain. But she was standing. That's it. Patricia shouted, her voice echoing through the small therapy room. You're doing it, Naomi. 10 more seconds. Naomi gritted her teeth and held on. Her vision swam. Her heart pounded so hard she thought it might explode. But she stayed up for another 8 seconds before her legs gave out and Patricia eased her back into the wheelchair. Naomi had never been so exhausted in her life. And she'd never felt more alive. We're getting there, Patricia said, grinning. 2 years of work and look at you now. Next month we'll try walking. Walking seemed impossible, but so had standing once. Naomi had learned to break impossibilities down into tiny, achievable pieces. Stand for 10 seconds became stand for 30 became stand for a minute. And then came the parallel bars, where she could hold herself up and try to make her legs remember what walking felt like. The first time she took a step, shuffling her right foot forward 6 inches while gripping the bars so hard her knuckles went white, Naomi cried for an hour afterward. One step. After 2 years and 2 months, one painful, clumsy, barely controlled step. But it was hers. Her data entry job had become more stable. The company promoted her to a supervisor position, managing other remote workers. Her pay increased to $18 an hour. It still wasn't enough to afford her own place, but Naomi continued to save every spare dollar. She also upgraded her investigation. With some of her savings, she bought better image enhancement software and spent hours analyzing that surveillance footage. She created a detailed timeline of that night, mapping out exactly where she'd been and when, cross-referencing it with Trevor's claimed whereabouts. He'd said he was working late at the office. But Naomi had called his office that night at 7, pretending she needed him to pick up milk on his way home. The receptionist said Trevor had left at 5:30. So where had he been for those 3 hours before he showed up at the hospital? Naomi started digging into their old phone records, which she could still access through their shared account that Trevor apparently forgot to close completely. On October 15th, Trevor had made 6 calls. 4 were to Brittany. 1 was to his mother, Gloria. And 1 was to an unknown number with a local area code. She traced the unknown number through a reverse lookup site. It belonged to Randy's Auto Body, a small shop in the industrial part of town. Why would Trevor call an auto body shop at 9:30 at night, an hour after her accident? Naomi filed that information away and kept digging. She also started looking into Gloria's finances, using some creative accounting tricks she'd learned at her old job. Public records showed that Gloria had purchased a new car in early November, just 3 weeks after Naomi's accident. She traded in her old sedan for a Toyota Camry. Naomi's hands shook as she read that. What kind of car had Gloria driven before? She spent a week tracking it down through DMV records she had to pay a hacker to access, something that made her uncomfortable but felt necessary. Gloria's previous car had been a dark blue Honda Accord, registered from 2011. The same make and model as the car in the surveillance footage. Naomi stared at her screen, her heart racing. It couldn't be a coincidence. It was too specific. But she needed more proof. She needed to find out what had happened to Gloria's old Honda. If it had the distinctive dent, if there was any damage from hitting a person. She contacted Randy's Auto Body, pretending to be interested in buying a used Honda. Do you have any 2011 Accords? Dark blue. The guy on the phone laughed. Lady, we're a repair shop, not a dealership. We don't sell cars. Oh, I'm sorry. My friend said you'd fixed up a car like that recently and might know where I could find one. There was a pause. We get a lot of cars through here. I can't really discuss our clients' vehicles. Of course, Naomi said quickly. I understand. Thanks anyway. But the pause had told her what she needed to know. Randy's had worked on a car matching that description. And Trevor had called them the night of her accident. The pieces were starting to form a picture, but it was still incomplete. Naomi needed more evidence. She needed something concrete that would hold up if she ever went to the police. Her visitation with the kids remained sporadic. Trevor made it difficult, claiming they had activities or weren't feeling well. In 2 years, Naomi had seen Terrence and Nia maybe 20 times. They were growing up without her, and the pain of that was worse than any physical therapy session. During one visit, 10-year-old Nia had asked, "Mommy, when are you going to be all better?" "Soon, baby," Naomi had promised, hugging her daughter tight. "Mommy's learning to walk again. It's hard, but I'm doing it. Dad says you'll never walk. He says you'll always be in that chair." The casual cruelty of it had stolen Naomi's breath. "Your dad is wrong. I'm going to walk again, and then I'm going to come get you both. Do you understand? I will never stop fighting to be with you." Terrence had rolled his eyes. At 10 years old, he was already becoming a teenager, influenced heavily by Trevor's poison. "Dad says you're crazy and we're better off without you." Those words had hurt more than anything physical ever could. But Naomi had swallowed the pain and smiled at her son. "One day you'll understand what really happened. And I hope you'll forgive me for not being there." By the end of year 2, Naomi could walk 30 feet with a walker before her legs gave out. Patricia had started talking about transitioning her to a cane, maybe even walking unassisted if she kept improving. "You're my best success story," Patricia told her one day. "Most people with your injury would still be in that wheelchair. You've worked harder than anyone I've ever trained." "I have something to work toward," Naomi said simply. "Your kids. That. And the truth. Someone did this to me, Patricia. It wasn't random. And I'm going to prove it." Patricia had looked at her seriously. "Be careful, Naomi. Some truths are dangerous to uncover." "I don't care. I've already lost everything. What else can they take from me?" "Your life," Patricia said quietly. "If you're right and someone deliberately hit you, then they're dangerous. Don't forget that." Naomi nodded, but she wasn't afraid. Fear had died somewhere in those first dark months after Trevor left. What she felt now was cold, determined rage. And that rage was keeping her alive, pushing her forward, making her stronger. She would walk again. She would find out what happened that night on Mercy Street. And she would make sure that everyone who'd played a part in destroying her life paid for it. The truth was out there, hidden under lies and cover-ups. But Naomi was patient. She'd learned patience through 2 years of grueling physical therapy, through countless small failures and tiny victories. And patience, she was discovering, was the most dangerous weapon she had. 3 years after the accident, Naomi walked out of Riverside Rehabilitation Center for the last time. She moved slowly, leaning heavily on a cane, but she walked. No wheelchair. No walker. Just her own 2 feet and a piece of carved wood for balance. Patricia stood at the entrance, tears streaming down her face. "You did it, girl. You actually did it." "We did it," Naomi corrected, hugging her therapist-turned-friend. "I couldn't have done this without you. Where are you going to live?" Naomi had found a small studio apartment in a neighborhood that wasn't great but wasn't dangerous either. It was all she could afford on her salary, but it was hers. "I'll be okay. I've survived worse than a small apartment." The apartment was on the ground floor, which was essential since stairs were still beyond her ability. It came furnished with a lumpy couch that folded out into a bed, a kitchenette with a 2-burner stove, and a bathroom with a shower that barely had enough water pressure. The walls were thin and she could hear her neighbors arguing most nights. But it had a window that let in natural light. And it had internet access, which was all Naomi really needed. She'd saved nearly $8,000 over 3 years. That money had to stretch to cover rent, food, and her investigation. She budgeted carefully, eating cheap meals and wearing the same 3 outfits on rotation. She didn't care about comfort or appearances anymore. She cared about truth. Her physical therapy continued, though less intensively now. She worked with Patricia twice a week, gradually building strength and balance. Walking with the cane was slow and tiring, but it was walking. Each week, she pushed herself to go a little farther, to need the cane a little less. And each night, she investigated. The surveillance footage had become her obsession. She'd watched it thousands of times, studying every pixel. She'd enhanced the image as much as possible, focusing on that distinctive dent in the rear passenger door. She printed out dozens of copies, marking angles and measurements. Then she started searching online for photos of Gloria's old Honda Accord. It took weeks of searching through social media, old photos Trevor had posted before they separated. And finally she found it. A photo from Christmas 4 years ago. Trevor standing in front of his parents' house. Behind him, parked in the driveway, was Gloria's dark blue Honda Accord. And there, just visible on the passenger side, was a dent in the exact same location as the car in her surveillance footage. Naomi's hands shook as she printed the photo. This was it. This was proof that Gloria's car was likely the one that had hit her. But she still needed more. She needed to find the car itself, or at least find out what had happened to it after Gloria sold it. Randy's auto body had been a dead end for direct information. But Naomi had gotten creative. She'd created a fake Facebook profile using a stock photo and pretended to be a young woman looking for car repair advice. She'd friended several employees from Randy's, including a mechanic named Carlos who posted frequently about his work. Over several months, she'd built a rapport with Carlos, asking innocent questions about car maintenance. And then carefully she'd steered the conversation toward a specific type of repair. "Do you guys ever get hit and run repairs?" she'd asked. "Like where someone damaged their car hitting something and wants it fixed without police involvement?" Carlos had been honest, probably more honest than he should have been. "All the time. We don't ask questions. Customer brings in a car, we fix it, they pay cash. Not our business what happened. Must be some crazy damage sometimes. You have no idea. Last year we had a car come in with blood on the bumper. Owner said they hit a deer. Maybe they did, maybe they didn't. We cleaned it up and fixed the dent. Collected our money and moved on." Naomi's heart had raced. Was it a blue Honda? The typing indicator had appeared and disappeared several times. Finally, "Why are you asking?" She'd had to back off then, claiming she was just curious. But the hesitation told her everything. Carlos remembered that car. And if he remembered it 3 years later, it must have been significant. Naomi considered going to the police with what she had. But she knew it wasn't enough yet. The footage showed a car that might be Gloria's. The auto shop had maybe worked on a car matching that description. Trevor had called them that night. All of it was circumstantial at best. She needed someone who could help her connect the dots. She needed a private investigator. Using $2,000 of her savings, Naomi hired Jamal Harper, a former detective who'd left the force after a corruption scandal he tried to expose. He worked alone now, taking cases that interested him rather than ones that paid the most. "This is personal for you," Jamal said when they met in a coffee shop. He was a big man with gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. He'd studied the file she'd put together over 3 years of investigation. "Yes," Naomi said simply. "Someone tried to kill me. Or at least hurt me badly enough to ruin my life. And I think my ex-husband and his mother were involved. That's a serious accusation." "I know. That's why I need proof." Jamal had been quiet for a long time, reading through her notes, studying the photos. Finally he nodded. "I'll take the case. But I want you to understand something. If we prove this, if we can show that your ex-husband and his mother conspired to hurt you, then we're talking about attempted murder. People don't take that lightly. They might come after you." "Let them try," Naomi said coldly. "I've already survived the worst thing they could do to me." Jamal worked fast. Within 2 weeks, he tracked down Gloria's old Honda. She'd sold it to a junkyard 3 weeks after the accident, claiming it had too many mechanical problems to be worth fixing. The junkyard had crushed it 6 months later. Convenient. But Jamal had connections. He found the junkyard owner and convinced him to check his records. The Honda had been crushed, but before that, someone had taken photos of all incoming vehicles for insurance purposes. The photos showed Gloria's Accord with significant front-end damage. The bumper was dented, the hood slightly crumpled, and the passenger side door had that distinctive dent. The photos were dated November 2nd, just weeks after Naomi's accident. "That's not mechanical failure," Jamal said, showing Naomi the prints. "That's impact damage. Someone hit something hard enough to damage the front end and the side." "Like a person?" Naomi whispered. "Like a person," Jamal confirmed. "Now we have physical evidence that Gloria's car was damaged around the time of your accident, and that she got rid of it quickly. Combined with your surveillance footage and Trevor's phone call to the auto shop, we're building a case." But they still needed more. They needed to prove that it wasn't just an unfortunate coincidence. They needed to establish motive and opportunity. That's when Jamal started digging into Trevor's affair. He hired someone to follow Trevor and Brittany, documenting their relationship. And he traced the affair's timeline backward through credit card statements, hotel records, and phone logs that Naomi helped him access. What they found was damning. Trevor and Brittany had been having an affair for over 2 years before Naomi's accident, not just the few months she'd suspected. They'd rented an apartment together using a shell company. They'd opened a joint bank account. They'd essentially been living a second life while Trevor pretended to be a devoted husband. And the affair had started to cause problems. Brittany was pushing Trevor to leave Naomi. There were text messages Jamal recovered from an old phone backup. Messages where Brittany threatened to tell Naomi everything if Trevor didn't file for divorce. Trevor had stalled, claiming he couldn't afford to split assets in a divorce. He needed to wait until his sales commission came through, until he could hide more money. But then Naomi had been hit by a car. And suddenly, Trevor had the perfect opportunity. He could divorce a paralyzed wife, claim she was unable to care for the children, and avoid losing half his assets. He'd probably even looked sympathetic, the devoted husband who just couldn't handle being a caregiver. The timing was too perfect. And Gloria's car being the one that hit Naomi was too specific. "I think your mother-in-law hit you deliberately," Jamal said. "And I think Trevor helped plan it. Maybe they just meant to scare you, to hurt you enough that you'd be hospitalized and he could take control of the assets and kids. Or maybe they meant to kill you. Either way, when you survived but ended up paralyzed, it worked out even better for them." Naomi listened to all of this with a strange calm. Part of her had known, deep down, that the accident hadn't been random. But hearing it confirmed, knowing that her husband and his mother had deliberately destroyed her life, was still devastating. "How do we prove it?" she asked. "We need a confession. Or we need physical evidence linking Gloria to the scene. The car's been destroyed, but there might be repair records from Randy's auto body. If we can prove they fixed damage consistent with hitting a person, and that Gloria paid for it around the time of your accident, that's enough to get the police interested." Jamal went to work. And 4 months into his investigation, he found what they needed. Randy's auto body kept terrible records which had helped Gloria hide the repair. But they digitized everything 3 years ago, scanning old receipts and work orders. And buried in those scans was a work order for a dark blue 2011 Honda Accord, brought in on October 16th at 11 p.m. The owner's name was listed as cash customer, but the work order detailed replacing a damaged front bumper, repairing the hood, and buffing out deep scratches on the passenger door. The total cost had been $3,000. And someone had noted, in sloppy handwriting at the bottom of the order, "Customer requested no questions. Paid extra for discretion." It was Gloria's car. It had to be. And she'd paid cash to have it repaired the night after hitting Naomi, begging the shop to stay quiet. "This is it," Jamal said, his eyes shining. "This is enough to reopen the investigation. Combined with everything else we have, this builds a case for attempted vehicular homicide and conspiracy." Naomi looked at the work order for a long time. 3 years of searching. 3 years of pain and therapy and rebuilding her shattered body. And it all came down to a piece of paper showing a cash transaction at an auto body shop. "What do I do now?" she asked. "You take this to the police. You show them everything we've found. And you let them do their job." Jamal paused. "But Naomi, you need to be prepared. Even with all this, there's no guarantee they'll charge anyone. The car's been destroyed. Gloria and Trevor can claim they didn't know about the hit and run. It's all circumstantial. Then I'll get more. I'll make them confess. That's dangerous. I don't care." Naomi stood up, leaning on her cane, and looked out the window at the city that had nearly destroyed her. "They took everything from me. They left me for dead. And they've been living their lives like nothing happened, like I was just an inconvenience they removed." She turned back to Jamal, and he actually flinched at whatever he saw in her eyes. "I'm not dead," Naomi said quietly. "I'm walking again. And I'm going to make sure they face justice for what they did. Whatever it takes." Jamal nodded slowly. "Then let's finish this." 4 years after the accident, Naomi walked into the offices of the district attorney carrying 3 years' worth of evidence in a folder that had become her most precious possession. Her limp was barely noticeable now. The cane was more precaution than necessity. To anyone who didn't know her story, she looked like a normal woman with a slight mobility issue. But Naomi knew the truth. Every step she took was a victory over the people who tried to destroy her. Assistant District Attorney Monica Chen reviewed the evidence with a sharp, critical eye. She was in her 40s, with silver-streaked hair and the weary expression of someone who'd seen too many cases fall apart in court. "This is compelling," Monica admitted after an hour of reviewing everything Naomi and Jamal had compiled. "But it's also circumstantial. The car that allegedly hit you has been destroyed. The auto shop records don't name your mother-in-law specifically. And your ex-husband's phone call to the shop could be explained away as innocent." "You don't believe it's innocent," Naomi said. It wasn't a question. Monica sighed. "No, I don't. I think you're probably right about what happened. But thinking it and proving it beyond reasonable doubt are two different things. A defense attorney would shred this. They'd argue that Gloria sold a damaged car to a junkyard because it had problems. They'd say Trevor called the shop about something unrelated. They'd claim the timing is coincidental. Then how do we make it less circumstantial? We need more. We need financial records showing money moved from Trevor or Gloria to Randy's auto body. We need witness testimony. We need something that definitively links them to the crime. Monica leaned back in her chair. Or we need a confession. Naomi had expected this. How do I get a confession? You don't. That's our job and it's tricky. We can bring them in for questioning, but with a lawyer present, they'll never admit to anything. What if they didn't have a lawyer present? Naomi asked carefully. Monica's eyes narrowed. I can't condone you approaching them directly. If you record them without permission, depending on the state laws and circumstances, it might not be admissible in court. And it could be dangerous. But if they said something incriminating in a public place, where there was no expectation of privacy? Monica was quiet for a moment. I didn't hear you say that. And I'm not advising you to do anything illegal or dangerous. But if evidence happened to surface from a legal source, we'd certainly review it. Naomi left the DA's office with a plan forming in her mind. It was risky, maybe even dangerous like everyone kept telling her. But she'd come too far to stop now. She called Jamal. I need your help with something. I'm not going to like this, am I? Probably not. They met at a diner and Naomi laid out her idea. She wanted to confront Gloria and Trevor separately in public places, with Jamal nearby recording everything. She wanted to push them, to make them defensive, to see if she could get either of them to slip up and say something incriminating. That's a terrible idea, Jamal said flatly. You have a better one? Yes. We keep digging. We find more evidence. We don't put you in danger by confronting the people who possibly tried to kill you once already. It's been 4 years, Jamal. My kids are 12 years old. Terrence barely speaks to me during our visits. Nia still loves me, but she's starting to believe the things Trevor says about me being unstable. If I wait any longer, I'll lose them completely. Jamal rubbed his face. You're sure about this? I've never been more sure of anything in my life. Over the next 2 weeks, they planned carefully. Jamal arranged for a high-quality recording device that looked like a normal button on Naomi's coat. He scouted locations and made sure he had good vantage points. He even consulted with a lawyer friend to make sure they weren't crossing any legal lines that would invalidate the evidence. The first confrontation was with Gloria. Naomi found her at the grocery store, the same chain where Naomi had shopped 4 years ago before her life changed forever. Gloria was in the produce section, examining apples with the careful attention of someone who had nothing better to do. She looked older than Naomi remembered. The 4 years hadn't been kind to her. There were deep lines around her mouth, and her hands shook slightly as she placed apples in a bag. Hello, Gloria, Naomi said, walking up behind her. Gloria spun around and the color drained from her face. Naomi, how are you walking? Surprised to see me on my feet? Naomi kept her voice pleasant, but there was steel underneath. Did you think I'd spend the rest of my life in a wheelchair? No, of course not. I'm just surprised. Trevor said you were still in rehabilitation. Trevor says a lot of things. Most of them are lies. Naomi picked up an apple, examining it casually. I've been doing some research lately. Looking into the night I was hit by that car. The police never solved it, you know. Gloria's hand tightened on her shopping cart. That's unfortunate. Isn't it? But I found surveillance footage from a business nearby. Shows a dark blue Honda Accord speeding away from the scene, with a distinctive dent in the passenger door. Naomi looked directly at Gloria. Just like the dent your old car had. I don't know what you're talking about. Yes, you do. You know exactly what I'm talking about. You drove that car into me on October 15th. You hit me and drove away and let me lie there bleeding in the street. Gloria's face flushed red. You're insane. You've always been unstable and this just proves it. Am I? Then explain why you sold your car 3 weeks later. Explain why your son called an auto body shop the night I was hit. Explain why that shop has records of repairing a car matching your Honda's description for cash. Naomi stepped closer. I know what you did, Gloria. And soon everyone else will too. You can't prove anything, Gloria hissed, her composure cracking. That car is gone. There's no evidence. But there is. Repair records. Surveillance footage. Phone records showing Trevor called the shop. Financial records that will show money being moved around. Some of this was exaggerated, but Naomi wanted to see how Gloria reacted. And when the police reopen the investigation, they'll find it all. Gloria's hands were shaking visibly now. It was an accident. I didn't mean to. I just wanted to scare you. To make you leave Trevor alone. Naomi's heart raced. This was it. This was the confession. Scare me? You paralyzed me. You were supposed to jump out of the way. I hit the gas instead of the brake. It wasn't supposed to happen like that. Gloria covered her mouth, realizing what she'd admitted. But Trevor planned it, didn't he? He wanted me out of the way so he could marry Brittany without losing everything in a divorce. No, Trevor didn't. He just mentioned that you were making his life difficult. That you wouldn't give him space. I wanted to help my son. By running me down in the street. I panicked. After I hit you, I panicked. I should have stopped, but I was so scared. Trevor helped me get the car fixed. He said we couldn't tell anyone because I'd go to prison. Tears were streaming down Gloria's face now. I never meant for you to be hurt so badly. I never meant for any of this. Naomi felt cold rage washing over her. This woman, this pathetic, weak woman, had destroyed her life to help her spoiled son avoid a fair divorce. You left me paralyzed. You took my children from me. You ruined everything. I'm sorry, Gloria sobbed. I'm so sorry. I think about it every day. Sorry doesn't fix what you did, but justice will. Naomi walked away, leaving Gloria crying in the produce section. Her legs were shaking, but she made it to the parking lot where Jamal was waiting in his car. Did you get it? She asked. He held up his phone, showing the recording app. Every word. She admitted to hitting you. She admitted Trevor helped cover it up. This is enough. Naomi collapsed into the passenger seat, adrenaline and emotion overwhelming her. She'd done it. After 4 years of searching and suffering, she finally had proof. What now? She asked. Now we take this to the DA. And we let her do her job. Jamal looked at Naomi with something like pride. You did good. This wasn't safe or smart, but you did good. They went directly to Monica Chen's office. She listened to the recording 3 times, her expression growing more intense with each playback. This is admissible, she finally said. Public place, no expectation of privacy, spontaneous admission. And she detailed the conspiracy with Trevor helping her cover it up. So you'll reopen the case? Better. I'm going to get arrest warrants. For Gloria, for Trevor, and possibly for the auto shop owner if we can prove he knew it was a hit and run. Monica stood up, energy crackling around her. Mrs. Richards, I'm going to be honest. This will be difficult. They'll get lawyers. They'll try to claim the recording was coerced or that Gloria was confused. But we have a real chance now. You gave us that chance. Naomi felt tears building behind her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. When will they be arrested? Within 48 hours. I need to present this to a judge and get the warrant signed. But it's happening. Monica extended her hand. Thank you for not giving up. A lot of people would have. They took everything from me, Naomi said simply. I had to take something back. The arrests happened on a Tuesday morning. Jamal called Naomi to tell her that both Gloria and Trevor had been taken into custody. The charges were attempted vehicular homicide, conspiracy, and obstruction of justice. Bail was set high enough that neither could pay it immediately. Naomi sat in her small apartment, processing the information. 4 years of pain, 4 years of work, and finally there was justice. But it wasn't over yet. The trial would take months, maybe longer. And she still had to fight to get her children back. One battle at a time, she told herself. She'd learned patience through 4 years of physical therapy. She could be patient a little longer. Outside her window, the sun was setting over the city. Naomi stood up without her cane, walked to the window, and looked out at the world she'd fought so hard to rejoin. She was still standing. She was still fighting. And she was going to win. The media caught wind of the story within days of the arrests. Local woman paralyzed by mother-in-law in alleged murder plot, read the headline in the morning paper. By evening, news vans were parked outside Gloria's house and Trevor's apartment building. Naomi stayed out of the spotlight at first, declining interview requests. She had too much work to do. With Trevor in jail awaiting trial and unable to block her access to the children, Naomi immediately filed a motion to modify custody. Her lawyer, no longer the overwhelmed public defender but a sharp family law attorney named Simone Barrett who'd read about her case and offered to work pro bono, was optimistic. Given that your ex-husband is now facing criminal charges for conspiracy in your injury, and given your remarkable recovery, we have an excellent case for revisiting custody. The hearing was set for 3 weeks away, which gave Naomi time to prepare. She gathered documentation of every supervised visit Trevor had canceled or made difficult. She collected her medical records showing her progression from paralysis to independent walking. She compiled evidence of her stable employment and suitable housing. And she prepared herself to see her children again, this time without Trevor controlling the narrative. Meanwhile, the criminal case moved forward. Monica Chin was thorough and relentless. She'd not only charged Gloria and Trevor, but she'd also gotten Randy, the owner of Randy's Auto Body, to flip in exchange for a reduced charge. He provided detailed testimony about Gloria bringing in the damaged Honda late at night, paying cash, and specifically requesting that he not report the damage to insurance or ask questions. She told me she'd hit a mailbox, Randy testified in the preliminary hearing. But the damage wasn't consistent with hitting a stationary object. There was blood on the undercarriage that I had to clean off. I knew something was wrong, but she paid me $5,000 in cash to keep quiet. I needed the money. Trevor's lawyer, an expensive attorney named Harrison Blackwell, tried to argue that his client had been manipulated by his mother. Mr. Richards had no knowledge of what his mother planned that night. He only helped her after the fact out of misguided family loyalty. But the phone records told a different story. Monica presented evidence of multiple calls between Trevor and Gloria in the week before the hit and run, including one 3-hour conversation the day before Naomi was hit. She also showed the text messages between Trevor and Brittany where he'd complained about needing Naomi out of the picture. These messages show premeditation, Monica argued. Mr. Richards wanted his wife gone. He discussed it with his mother. And when Gloria carried out the attack, Trevor immediately helped cover it up. This isn't a case of family loyalty. This is conspiracy to commit attempted murder. The preliminary hearing lasted 2 days. At the end, the judge ruled that there was sufficient evidence to proceed to trial. Gloria and Trevor were officially indicted. Brittany, Trevor's mistress and now ex-girlfriend, was not charged but was called as a witness. She testified that Trevor had told her Naomi's accident was convenient timing, and that he'd seemed strangely calm about his wife being paralyzed. I thought he was in shock, Brittany said on the stand, her voice shaking. But looking back, he wasn't surprised at all. It was like he'd been expecting something to happen to her. Naomi sat in the courtroom for that hearing, watching Trevor's face as Brittany testified. He looked older, thinner, defeated. But there was still arrogance in his eyes, like he believed his expensive lawyer would somehow get him out of this. During a recess, Trevor's eyes met Naomi's across the courtroom. She saw recognition there and something else. Fear. Good, Naomi thought. Now you know how it feels. The custody hearing arrived on a cold March morning, 4 years and 5 months after the accident. Naomi wore a simple blue dress and walked into the courtroom without her cane. She'd practiced at home, making sure she could stand and sit without assistance, making sure nothing about her appearance suggested disability. Terrence and Nia were there, sitting with a court-appointed guardian. They both looked nervous and confused. Nia's eyes lit up when she saw Naomi, but Terrence remained stony-faced, still influenced by years of Trevor's manipulation. Simone presented their case efficiently. She showed the court Naomi's medical records, demonstrating her complete recovery. She presented evidence of stable employment, suitable housing, and a support system that included Dr. Patricia Owens, who'd written a letter testifying to Naomi's determination and character. Then Simone showed the court every canceled visitation, every obstacle Trevor had placed between Naomi and her children. Mr. Richards deliberately isolated his children from their mother while she was at her most vulnerable. He told them she would never recover. He told them she was unstable. He poisoned them against her while conspiring with his mother to keep Mrs. Richards from ever being able to fight for custody. The prosecutor from the criminal case had been invited to provide testimony. She explained the charges against Trevor and the evidence that suggested he'd been involved in planning the hit and run that had paralyzed his wife. The court should consider, Monica said, that Mr. Richards' treatment of Mrs. Richards wasn't just cruel abandonment. It was part of a larger conspiracy to permanently remove her from his life and from their children's lives. He attempted to murder their mother. Trevor's attorney tried to argue that the criminal case was separate from custody matters, but the judge shut that down. The welfare of these children is this court's primary concern, and their welfare is directly impacted by whether their father attempted to have their mother killed. The judge interviewed both children privately in her chambers. Naomi waited outside, her heart pounding. Everything depended on what Terrence and Nia said. If Trevor had poisoned them too thoroughly against her, if they refused to live with her, the court would take that into consideration. After 30 minutes, the judge called everyone back into the courtroom. I've spoken with both children, Judge Reeves said, her voice firm. And I've reviewed the evidence presented by both parties. This is an unusual case with extraordinary circumstances. Naomi held her breath. Terrence Richards is 12 years old and has expressed conflicted feelings about his mother. He has been significantly influenced by his father's negative statements about Mrs. Richards. But when pressed, he admitted that he misses her and wants to see her more often. Nia Richards is also 12 and has been very clear that she wants to live with her mother. The judge looked directly at Naomi. Mrs. Richards, your recovery is nothing short of remarkable. You have demonstrated extraordinary resilience and determination. However, I'm concerned about the children's stability given that they've been living primarily with their father for over 4 years. Naomi's heart sank. Therefore, the judge continued, I'm ordering a transition plan. Custody will be gradually transitioned to Mrs. Richards over the next 3 months. The children will spend increasing amounts of time with their mother, with the goal of her becoming the primary custodial parent by June 1st. Mr. Richards' father, Gregory Richards, will provide housing for the children during this transition, as Trevor Richards remains incarcerated awaiting trial. Your Honor, Simone stood up quickly. Mrs. Richards' apartment is suitable for the children. There's no need for them to stay with Mr. Richards' family given the circumstances. I understand your concern, but the children know their grandfather, and he has agreed to supervised visitation with Mrs. Richards in his home until the transition is complete. This allows the children to adjust gradually. The judge's expression softened slightly. Mrs. Richards, I know this isn't the immediate result you hoped for. But it's my job to consider what's best for your children. They need time to readjust to having you in their lives full-time. This transition plan protects them emotionally. It wasn't perfect, but it was something. Naomi stood up, her legs steady despite the emotion coursing through her. Thank you, Your Honor. I'll do whatever is necessary for my children. After the hearing, Naomi met with the children briefly in a conference room. Nia ran to her immediately, throwing her arms around her mother's waist. Mommy, you're really walking. You're okay. I'm okay, baby. And soon, you and your brother are going to come live with me again. Naomi kissed the top of her daughter's head, breathing in the familiar scent of her shampoo. Terrence stood back, arms folded. Dad said you're lying about everything. He said Grandma didn't mean to hit you. Naomi crouched down to her son's level, even though her legs protested the movement. Terrence, I know your father has told you a lot of things about me. And I know it's confusing. But I promise you I have never lied to you. Your grandmother admitted what she did. There's a recording of her confession. And your father helped her hide it. Why would they do that? Because people sometimes make terrible choices when they're afraid or selfish. And your father was more worried about his girlfriend than about me or you kids. Terrence's face crumpled. He has a girlfriend? Of course Trevor hadn't told them. He'd kept Brittany secret even after the arrest. He does. Her name is Brittany. They were together while he was still married to me. He cheated on you? Yes. Terrence was quiet for a long moment. Then in a small voice he asked, did you really almost die when you got hit? Yes, baby. I did. And I had to learn to walk again. Took me 4 years, but I did it. Because I knew I needed to be strong enough to come back to you and your sister. Her son started crying then, and Naomi pulled him into her arms. He resisted at first, but then collapsed against her, sobbing. I'm sorry, Mom. I'm sorry I believed Dad. I should have known he was lying. You were a child. You trusted your father. That's not your fault. Naomi held both her children, feeling more whole than she had in 4 years. I love you both so much. And we're going to be a family again. A real family. Over the next 3 months, Naomi spent every spare moment with her children. The visits were supervised at first, then unsupervised. They started with a few hours, then full days, then overnights at her small apartment where she gave the kids her bed and slept on the lumpy couch. She met with a family therapist who helped them process the trauma of the last 4 years. She answered their questions honestly about the hit and run, about Trevor's betrayal, about what would happen to their father and grandmother. And slowly, her children began to trust her again. Terrence especially underwent a transformation, going from sullen and defensive to open and affectionate. He apologized repeatedly for believing Trevor's lies, and Naomi reassured him each time that she understood. The criminal trial was set for September, 5 months away. Monica kept Naomi updated on developments. Gloria's lawyer was trying to negotiate a plea deal, but Trevor's attorney was pushing for trial, convinced he could argue that his client had been manipulated by his mother. Let him try, Naomi said. I want him to face a jury. I want 12 people to hear what he did to me. It might be hard, Monica warned. You'll have to testify. You'll have to relive everything. I've been reliving it every day for 4 years. At least this time it will serve a purpose. On June 1st, exactly as the judge had ordered, Terrence and Nia moved into Naomi's apartment. It was cramped and far from ideal, but they made it work. Naomi enrolled them in a new school near her apartment. She adjusted her work schedule so she could be there when they got home. And she started saving money again, this time for a bigger place where her kids could each have their own room. Life wasn't perfect. Money was tight. The apartment was small. Both kids had nightmares about losing their mother again. Terrence struggled with anger at his father. Nia became clingy, afraid to let Naomi out of her sight. But they were together. They were a family. And every morning when Naomi woke up in her apartment with her children sleeping nearby, she felt like she'd won the greatest victory of her life. The trial was still ahead. Justice was still incomplete. But Naomi had her children back. And nothing Trevor or Gloria did could take that away from her again. She was walking. She was whole. And she was ready for whatever came next. 5 years and 1 month after the accident, Naomi sat in a packed courtroom waiting for the trial to begin. It was September 10th, a Tuesday, and the city was just starting to feel the first hints of fall. She wore a gray suit she'd bought at a thrift store and had tailored to fit perfectly. Her hair was pulled back in a professional bun. She wore minimal makeup and simple jewelry. She wanted to look like what she was: a survivor, a mother, and a woman who refused to be broken. The courtroom was full of spectators. The media had followed this case obsessively for months. Paralyzed wife walks again to face husband who tried to kill her, had been the headline that sent the story viral. News crews from major networks were positioned outside the courthouse. Naomi ignored all of it. Her focus was on the 2 tables at the front of the courtroom. At one sat Gloria Hayes with her attorney, a nervous-looking young man who'd been appointed by the court because Gloria couldn't afford anyone better. She'd been offered a plea deal: plead guilty to attempted vehicular homicide and obstruction of justice, serve 15 years with possibility of parole after 10. Gloria had refused, convinced that a jury would see she hadn't meant to hurt Naomi so badly. At the other table sat Trevor and his attorney Harrison Blackwell. Trevor's suit was expensive, his hair perfectly styled. He sat straight-backed, projecting confidence. His bail had been posted by his father, Gregory, who'd mortgaged his house to do it. Trevor hadn't looked at Naomi once since she'd entered the courtroom. The judge entered and everyone stood. Judge Patricia Martinez was known for running a tight courtroom and having little patience for games. She reviewed the case details briefly, then looked at both defense tables. Before we begin jury selection, I want to make sure both defendants understand their options. Mrs. Hayes, your attorney has informed me that you've rejected a plea agreement. Is that correct? Gloria stood shakily. Yes, Your Honor. And Mr. Richards, you've also rejected multiple plea offers? Trevor stood, his voice strong. Yes, Your Honor. I'm innocent of these charges. Very well. Let's proceed. Jury selection took 3 days. Monica worked carefully to seat people who could be impartial despite the intense media coverage. The final jury was 8 women and 4 men, ranging in age from 25 to 67. A diverse group, representing the community that would judge Gloria and Trevor. Opening statements began on Friday. Monica stood before the jury, commanding their attention effortlessly. 5 years ago, Naomi Richards was walking home from the grocery store on her wedding anniversary. Her husband had claimed he was working late, but really he was with his mistress. Naomi was alone on a dark street when a car driven by her mother-in-law, Gloria Hayes, deliberately struck her. That impact shattered Naomi's spine, paralyzed her from the waist down, and changed her life forever. Monica paused, letting the weight of those words settle. But that wasn't enough. While Naomi lay in a hospital bed, unable to walk, unable to care for herself, her husband Trevor Richards divorced her. He took her children. He took her home. He left her with nothing while he built a new life with his mistress. And when police investigated the hit and run, Trevor and his mother worked together to cover up their crime. She walked slowly in front of the jury box. The evidence will show you that this wasn't an accident. It wasn't a coincidence. It was a conspiracy. Trevor Richards wanted his wife gone so he could avoid a messy divorce. His mother, Gloria Hayes, loved her son enough to commit attempted murder. Together, they destroyed Naomi Richards' life. Or at least they tried to. Monica turned and gestured toward Naomi. But Naomi Richards refused to stay destroyed. She spent 5 years learning to walk again. She fought to get her children back. And she never stopped searching for the truth about what happened that night on Mercy Street. Over the next week, you'll hear testimony that will prove beyond reasonable doubt that Gloria Hayes deliberately hit Naomi with her car, and that Trevor Richards helped plan and cover up that crime. You'll hear Gloria's own confession, recorded when Naomi confronted her. You'll see evidence of the damaged car being hastily repaired and then destroyed. You'll learn about the financial records, the phone calls, the conspiracy. Monica's voice grew harder. And when you've heard all of it, I'm going to ask you to deliver justice. To tell Naomi Richards that what happened to her mattered. That the people who tried to kill her, who left her paralyzed and alone, will be held accountable. Thank you. Harrison Blackwell stood for Trevor's defense. He was smooth and polished, exactly what you'd expect from a lawyer charging $500 an hour. Ladies and gentlemen, my client is innocent. Trevor Richards is a devoted father, a successful businessman, and a man who made some mistakes in his marriage, yes, but who never conspired to hurt anyone. The prosecution wants you to believe that Trevor planned this attack with his mother. But the evidence will show something different. It will show a mother who acted alone, impulsively, stupidly, and a son who only learned about it after the fact. He walked toward the jury, his expression earnest. Was Trevor unfaithful? Yes. He admits that. He was having an affair and that was wrong. But being a bad husband doesn't make you a criminal. Having an affair doesn't mean you wanted your wife dead. The prosecution's case rests on circumstantial evidence and the emotional testimony of a woman who has every reason to be angry at my client. But anger and accusations aren't proof. Phone calls to an auto shop aren't proof. Divorcing an injured spouse while morally questionable isn't a crime. Harrison paused dramatically. Trevor Richards made bad choices in his personal life. But he didn't try to kill anyone. And when you've heard all the evidence, when you've separated emotion from fact, you'll find that the prosecution hasn't proven their case. Thank you. Gloria's court-appointed attorney gave a weaker defense, essentially arguing that Gloria had panicked, that it was a terrible accident, and that she'd been traumatized by what happened. It wasn't convincing, and Naomi could see the jury wasn't buying it. The prosecution's case took 5 days to present. Monica called witness after witness, building a timeline that was damning in its precision. She started with the police detective who'd handled the initial hit-and-run investigation. He testified that there had been no useful evidence at the scene and that the case had gone cold. Then came the owner of the dry cleaning business who'd provided the surveillance footage. Naomi watched the jury lean forward as the grainy video played on a screen, showing a dark sedan speeding away from where she'd been hit. Randy from the auto body shop testified next, admitting his role in repairing Gloria's car without reporting it. She paid me $5,000 in cash to keep quiet. She said she'd hit a mailbox, but the damage told a different story. There was blood on the undercarriage. Several jury members looked disgusted. The junkyard owner testified about receiving Gloria's Honda just 3 weeks after the accident, noting that the damage was recent and significant. Jamal Harper, the private investigator, walked the jury through the investigation he'd conducted with Naomi. He presented phone records, financial documents, and the timeline of Trevor's affair with Brittany. Mr. Richards and Ms. Brittany Chambers had been having an affair for over 2 years, Jamal testified. Text messages between them show Mr. Richards complaining repeatedly about his wife and wishing she was out of the picture. One message, sent 3 days before Mrs. Richards was hit, says, "I can't leave her without losing everything. If only she'd just disappear." The courtroom buzzed with whispered reactions. Monica also called Dr. Patricia Owens, who testified about Naomi's extraordinary recovery. Most people with her injury would never walk again. Mrs. Richards spent 5 years in intensive rehabilitation. She never gave up, even when her prognosis was poor. Her determination was unlike anything I've seen in 20 years as a physical therapist. Then came Brittany Chambers, Trevor's ex-mistress. She looked uncomfortable on the stand, her voice shaking as she testified. "Trevor told me his wife was in the way," Brittany said. "He said he couldn't divorce her because she'd take half his money and fight for custody. He was frustrated that she wouldn't just, I don't know, disappear or agree to leave." "Did he ever discuss harming his wife?" Monica asked. "Not directly. But he said things like, life would be easier if something happened to her. I thought he was just venting. I didn't think he actually meant it." Harrison Blackwell objected repeatedly, claiming Brittany's testimony was biased because Trevor had broken up with her after his arrest. But the damage was done. The jury had heard Trevor express a desire for his wife to disappear, and just days later, his mother had run her down in the street. On the 6th day of trial, Monica played the recording of Gloria's confession. The courtroom was completely silent as Gloria's voice filled the space. "It was an accident. I didn't mean to. I just wanted to scare you. To make you leave Trevor alone. You were supposed to jump out of the way. I hit the gas instead of the brake. It wasn't supposed to happen like that. When Gloria admitted that Trevor had helped her get the car fixed and kept the secret, several jury members shook their heads in disgust. Finally, on day 7, Monica called Naomi to the stand. Walking to the witness box felt surreal. Naomi was aware of everyone watching her, judging whether she really had recovered as fully as the medical records claimed. She walked steadily without assistance and sat down calmly. Monica's questions were straightforward. She asked Naomi to describe the night of the accident, her injuries, Trevor's abandonment, and her long recovery. Naomi answered each question clearly and without excessive emotion. She stated facts, not feelings. "Mrs. Richards," Monica asked, "can you describe what your life has been like over the past 5 years?" Naomi took a deep breath. "I spent the first year lying in a hospital bed and rehabilitation facility, unable to move my legs, wondering if I'd ever walk again. I spent the next 4 years learning to walk, working a minimum wage job, living in a small room at a state facility, and fighting to see my children. I missed 4 years of their lives because my ex-husband told them I was broken and unstable. And did you ever consider giving up?" "Every single day. But I had something to live for. My children needed me. And I needed answers about what happened that night on Mercy Street." "Do you believe your ex-husband was involved in planning the hit and run?" "I know he was. The evidence is clear. He wanted me gone and his mother made it happen. Then he helped cover it up so he could take everything from me." Harrison Blackwell's cross-examination was aggressive. He tried to paint Naomi as bitter and vindictive, as someone who'd fabricated a conspiracy theory to explain a random tragedy. "Mrs. Richards, isn't it true that you were depressed after your accident?" "Yes. My spine was broken and I couldn't walk. Of course I was depressed. And isn't it possible that in your depressed state, you've constructed a narrative that blames your ex-husband for something his mother did alone?" "No. The evidence speaks for itself." "You admit you're angry at my client?" "Yes. He abandoned me when I needed him most. He took my children. He helped cover up a crime. I have every reason to be angry. And that anger has motivated you to falsely accuse him of attempted murder?" Naomi looked directly at Trevor for the first time during the trial. He met her gaze with cold indifference. "I haven't falsely accused anyone. Your client wanted me gone. His mother made it happen. And they both tried to destroy my life. Those are facts, not anger." Harrison tried several more times to shake her testimony, but Naomi remained calm and consistent. After 45 minutes, he gave up. The defense presented their case over 2 days. They called character witnesses for Trevor, colleagues who claimed he was a good guy who'd made some mistakes. They tried to argue that the phone calls and messages were being misinterpreted. They claimed that Trevor had been manipulated by his mother, who was clearly the sole perpetrator. Gloria's attorney called psychiatrists who testified that she suffered from anxiety and had been under stress about her son's failing marriage. They painted her as a desperate mother who'd snapped, not a calculating would-be murderer. But none of it was convincing against the mountain of evidence Monica had presented. Trevor chose not to testify. His lawyer advised against it, probably knowing that Monica would destroy him on cross-examination. Gloria did testify, tearfully claiming she'd only meant to scare Naomi, that she'd never intended to hurt her so badly. "I just wanted her to step aside so Trevor could be happy," Gloria sobbed. "I didn't mean for any of this to happen. I've been living with guilt for 5 years." But her tears rang hollow after the jury had heard her confession and learned about the cover-up. Closing arguments happened on a Friday afternoon, exactly 2 weeks after the trial began. Monica's closing was powerful. She walked the jury through every piece of evidence, connecting the dots clearly and logically. This was a conspiracy. Trevor Richards wanted his wife gone. Gloria Hayes made it happen. Together, they tried to murder Naomi Richards and destroy any evidence of their crime. The only reason we're here today is because Naomi refused to stay victim. She fought back. She recovered. She found the truth. Now it's up to you to deliver justice. Find them both guilty. Tell Naomi Richards that what they did to her was wrong and that they will pay for it. Harrison Blackwell tried his best in his closing, but he was fighting a losing battle. The evidence was too strong, the timeline too clear. He asked the jury to find reasonable doubt, to separate Trevor's bad personal choices from criminal intent. But his words felt weak against everything they'd heard. The jury deliberated for 7 hours over 2 days. Naomi waited in a small conference room with Monica, Jamal, Patricia, and her children. The hours crawled by. She tried to stay calm for Terrence and Nia, but inside, her heart was racing. Everything came down to this. 12 strangers deciding whether her suffering would be acknowledged, whether her ex-husband and former mother-in-law would face consequences. Finally, the call came. The jury had reached a verdict. They filed back into the courtroom, and Naomi could barely breathe as she watched them sit down. None of them looked at the defendants, which Monica had told her was usually a good sign. Judge Martinez asked, "Has the jury reached a verdict?" The forewoman, a middle-aged black woman with graying hair, stood up. "We have, Your Honor. In the case of the People versus Gloria Hayes, on the charge of attempted vehicular homicide, how do you find? Guilty. On the charge of conspiracy to commit vehicular homicide? Guilty. On the charge of obstruction of justice? Guilty." Gloria collapsed in her chair, sobbing. In the case of the People versus Trevor Richards, on the charge of conspiracy to commit vehicular homicide, how do you find? Guilty. On the charge of obstruction of justice? Guilty. Naomi felt something break open inside her chest. Tears streamed down her face as the judge thanked the jury and set a sentencing date for 1 month away. Trevor stared straight ahead, his face blank with shock. His expensive lawyer patted his shoulder, probably already planning an appeal. But it didn't matter. They'd been found guilty. A jury had heard the evidence and believed Naomi. They'd acknowledged what had been done to her. Outside the courtroom, surrounded by reporters shouting questions, Naomi stood with Monica and made a brief statement. 5 years ago, someone tried to kill me. They left me paralyzed, took my children, and destroyed my life. Today, justice was served. Today, a jury said that what happened to me mattered. That's all I wanted. Justice, accountability, and the chance to rebuild my life with my children. That night, in her small apartment with Terrence and Nia sleeping in the bedroom, Naomi stood by the window and looked out at the city lights. She was exhausted, emotionally drained, but also at peace in a way she hadn't felt in 5 years. She had walked again. She had her children back. And she had justice. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. Trevor would probably appeal. The sentencing might not be as harsh as she hoped. Life would continue to be difficult and complicated. But tonight, Naomi just stood there, feeling the solid floor beneath her feet, and allowed herself to believe that everything would be okay. She had survived. She had fought back. And she had won. The sentencing hearing took place on a gray November morning, exactly 5 years and 1 month after the accident. Naomi sat in the front row of the courtroom, flanked by her children and Dr. Patricia Owens. She wore a navy dress and carried herself with quiet dignity. Gloria was brought in first, wearing an orange jail jumpsuit. She looked 20 years older than she had 5 years ago. Prison time while awaiting sentencing had not been kind to her. She kept her eyes down as she shuffled to the defendant's table. Trevor came next, also in prison orange. His expensive suits were gone, his perfect hair was unwashed, and the arrogance had drained from his expression. He looked defeated, which gave Naomi a small measure of satisfaction. Judge Martinez reviewed the pre-sentencing reports, then looked at both defendants. "Before I impose sentence, I want to give the victim an opportunity to make a statement. Mrs. Richards, would you like to address the court?" Naomi stood slowly, using the moment to gather her thoughts. She'd written and rewritten her victim impact statement dozens of times. Finally, she decided to speak from her heart rather than from notes. "Your Honor, 5 years ago these two people destroyed my life. Gloria Hayes drove her car into me deliberately, leaving me paralyzed on a dark street. Trevor Richards, my husband, the man who promised to love me in sickness and health, divorced me while I was in a hospital bed. He took my children and told them I was too broken to be their mother." Naomi's voice remained steady. "I spent a year unable to walk. I spent 4 more years learning how to walk again through therapy so painful I thought I would die. I lost time with my children that I can never get back. I lost my home, my savings, my career, and my sense of safety." She looked directly at Trevor and Gloria. "But what hurts most isn't the physical pain or the material losses. It's the betrayal. Gloria, you were my children's grandmother. I trusted you. Trevor, you were my husband, the father of my babies. I loved you. And you both conspired to eliminate me like I was an inconvenient problem to be solved. For 5 years I've been working to rebuild my life. I walk now without assistance. I have my children back. I have a job and a home. But I still carry the scars of what you did. I still have nightmares about lying on that street, watching the taillights disappear. I still panic when I hear cars approaching too quickly." Naomi's voice grew harder. "You both had chances to do the right thing. Gloria, you could have stopped after you hit me. You could have called for help. You could have admitted what you'd done. Trevor, you could have supported me during my recovery. You could have told the truth about the cover-up. Instead, you both chose yourselves over justice, over me, over your own grandchildren. So I'm asking this court to impose the maximum sentence allowed by law. Not because I want revenge, but because accountability matters. What you did was evil. And people who do evil things should face consequences. Naomi sat down and Judge Martinez nodded approvingly. Thank you, Mrs. Richards. Does either defendant wish to speak before sentencing? Gloria's attorney had convinced her to make a statement. She stood shakily, her voice barely audible. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Naomi. I never meant to hurt you so badly. I just wanted my son to be happy. I made a terrible mistake and I've paid for it every day. I know you can't forgive me, but I hope someday you'll understand that I never wanted this. Naomi felt nothing at Gloria's words. They were too little, too late, and they focused more on Gloria's suffering than on what she'd done to Naomi. Trevor declined to speak, which didn't surprise Naomi. He'd never taken responsibility for anything in his life. Judge Martinez reviewed the sentencing guidelines, then delivered her verdict. Gloria Hayes, you have been convicted of attempted vehicular homicide, conspiracy, and obstruction of justice. These are serious crimes that resulted in severe, life-altering harm to the victim. While I acknowledge your statement of remorse, your actions after hitting Mrs. Richards show a pattern of deception and self-interest. You fled the scene. You covered up the crime. You allowed your son to divorce and abandon his paralyzed wife while you stayed silent. The judge's voice was firm. I sentence you to 20 years in prison with the possibility of parole after 15. Additionally, you are ordered to pay restitution to Mrs. Richards in the amount of $200,000 to cover medical expenses and lost wages. Gloria burst into tears, but Naomi felt only a cold satisfaction. 20 years. Gloria would be in her 70s when she got out if she lived that long. Judge Martinez turned to Trevor. Mr. Richards, your case is in some ways more disturbing than your mother's. While your mother made a terrible decision in a moment of panic, you engaged in calculated, sustained cruelty. You conspired with your mother. You helped cover up a crime. You divorced your paralyzed wife and took her children. You showed no remorse, no compassion, no humanity. Trevor shifted uncomfortably but said nothing. You are sentenced to 15 years in prison for conspiracy to commit vehicular homicide and obstruction of justice. You will be eligible for parole after 10 years. You are also ordered to pay restitution to Mrs. Richards in the amount of $300,000. Additionally, I am ordering that your parental rights be reviewed. Given your criminal conviction and your treatment of your children's mother, it is this court's opinion that supervised visitation is appropriate until such time as you can prove you are a fit parent. Trevor's face went white. Losing his parental rights clearly hit harder than the prison sentence. Furthermore, the judge continued, I want both of you to understand something. Mrs. Richards is alive today not because you showed mercy, but because she refused to die. She survived your attempt to destroy her, and she rebuilt her life through sheer determination. You both should be ashamed of what you tried to take from her. Judge Martinez banged her gavel. Court is adjourned. As the bailiffs led Gloria and Trevor away, Trevor finally looked at Naomi. There was hatred in his eyes, mixed with disbelief. He'd never imagined she would actually win. He'd assumed he'd get away with it, that his expensive lawyer would save him, that Naomi would stay broken and powerless. But Naomi had won. And as she watched him being led away in handcuffs, she felt the last of the anger drain away, replaced by something like peace. Outside the courthouse, the media was waiting. Monica Chin stood beside Naomi as she made a brief statement. Today justice was served. Gloria Hayes will spend 20 years in prison. Trevor Richards will spend 15. That won't give me back the years I lost or erase what they did to me. But it sends a message that people can't hurt others without consequences. I want to thank everyone who helped me get here. My physical therapist Dr. Patricia Owens, my investigator Jamal Harper, prosecutor Monica Chin, and my attorney Simone Barrett. Most of all, I want to thank my children for staying strong through all of this. A reporter shouted, "What will you do now?" Naomi smiled, really smiled for the first time in what felt like years. I'm going to live. I'm going to be a mother to my children. And I'm going to help other people who are going through what I went through. Over the next few months, Naomi worked to establish the Naomi Richards Foundation for hit-and-run victims. Using the restitution money Trevor and Gloria would eventually pay, plus funds she raised through media appearances and speaking engagements, she created an organization that helped victims find investigators, connect with lawyers, and access rehabilitation services. The foundation also lobbied for stronger hit-and-run laws and better support systems for people with spinal injuries. Naomi became a voice for victims, sharing her story at conferences and on television programs. Her apartment was still small, but now she could afford a better one. She moved into a 2-bedroom place in a safer neighborhood. Terrence got his own room, Nia got hers, and Naomi slept on a decent couch that didn't hurt her back. The kids were doing better. Therapy helped them process what their father and grandmother had done. Terrence struggled the most, feeling betrayed by his father and guilty for having believed Trevor's lies about Naomi. But slowly, with support and time, he healed. Nia was more resilient. She was just happy to have her mother back and to know that Naomi would never leave her again. Naomi's relationship with her children strengthened every day. She attended every school event, helped with homework, cooked their favorite meals. She was present in a way she couldn't have been before, because she knew how precious every moment was. Dr. Patricia Owens became like family, joining them for dinners and holidays. Jamal stopped by occasionally to check in and share updates about new cases he was working on. Monica Chin sent cards and encouraged Naomi to consider law school, saying she'd make an excellent advocate. And then there was Jordan. Naomi had met Jordan Mitchell during the trial. He was a photojournalist who'd been covering the case for a national news magazine. He was tall, with kind eyes and a gentle manner that put Naomi at ease despite the circumstances. After the sentencing, Jordan had asked if he could do a follow-up feature on Naomi's recovery and the foundation she was starting. Professional at first, just interviews and photo sessions. But something shifted over time. He listened when she talked about the hard days, when the phantom pains in her legs made it difficult to sleep, when the memories threatened to overwhelm her. He didn't try to fix her or tell her she should be over it by now. He just listened. 6 months after the trial, Jordan asked Naomi to dinner. Not for an article, he clarified quickly. Just because I'd like to spend time with you. Naomi had been terrified. Dating again felt impossible. How could she trust anyone after Trevor's betrayal? But something about Jordan felt safe. Maybe it was the way he looked at her, not with pity but with admiration. Maybe it was the way he treated her children, engaging with them genuinely without trying too hard. Their first date was simple. Coffee at a cafe near her apartment, talking for 3 hours about everything and nothing. Jordan shared stories about growing up in Chicago, about his work documenting social justice issues, about his own struggles after a difficult divorce years ago. I'm probably broken in some ways, Naomi told him honestly. What Trevor and Gloria did changed me. I don't trust easily anymore. I have nightmares. Some days I still can't believe I survived all of it. Jordan reached across the table and took her hand. We're all a little broken. That's what makes us human. And honestly, Naomi, you're the strongest person I've ever met. You survived something that would have destroyed most people. You fought your way back. That's not broken. That's extraordinary. They took things slowly. No pressure, no rushing. Jordan met the kids officially and they liked him. He came to Terrence's basketball games and helped Nia with a school project about photojournalism. A year after the trial, Jordan and Naomi were officially dating. It wasn't perfect. Naomi still had moments of doubt and fear. She still sometimes woke up expecting to find herself back in that hospital bed, paralyzed and alone. But Jordan was patient. And slowly Naomi learned to trust again. Not blindly like she had with Trevor, but carefully, building something real on a foundation of honesty and mutual respect. 2 years after the trial, on a sunny afternoon in October, Naomi stood in her new 3-bedroom apartment with her children, Patricia, Jamal, Monica, Simone, and Jordan. They were celebrating the foundation's 2nd anniversary and the fact that they'd helped 23 hit-and-run victims find justice. I want to make a toast, Terrence said, now 14 and tall like his father but with Naomi's kind eyes. To my mom, who's basically a superhero. You taught us that no matter how bad things get, you can survive. You can fight back. And you can win. Everyone raised their glasses and Naomi felt tears prick her eyes. Not sad tears this time. Happy ones. I couldn't have done any of this without all of you, she said. 5 years ago, I was lying in a hospital bed thinking my life was over. But it wasn't over. It was just beginning again. Thank you for helping me rebuild. That night, after everyone left and the kids were asleep, Naomi stood by the window looking out at the city lights. Jordan came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. What are you thinking about? He asked. Everything. How far I've come. How much I've survived. She leaned back against him. I'm thinking that I'm happy. Really, genuinely happy. I didn't think I'd ever feel this way again. You earned it. We all earned it, Naomi corrected. Every single person who helped me deserves credit for this. Jordan kissed the top of her head. What do you want to do next? Naomi smiled. I want to keep growing the foundation. I want to help more people. I want to be there for my kids as they grow up. And I want to see where this goes. She turned to face him. I want to see where we go. I like that plan. As they stood there, holding each other in the quiet apartment with her children sleeping safely nearby, Naomi reflected on everything she'd lost and everything she'd gained. Trevor and Gloria had tried to destroy her. They'd taken her mobility, her family, her life. They'd left her with nothing. But they'd also inadvertently made her stronger. The struggle to walk again had taught her resilience. The fight for justice had taught her determination. The battle to get her children back had taught her what really mattered. She'd walked again. She'd found justice. She'd rebuilt her life. And now, finally, she was thriving. 3 years after the trial, 7 years after the accident, Naomi Richards stood on a stage at the City Convention Center, addressing a crowd of 500 people attending the annual Hit and Run Victims Conference. She wore a professional suit, her hair styled neatly, and she walked to the podium without any assistance. 7 years ago, she began, her voice clear and strong, I was paralyzed, abandoned, and broken. Someone had deliberately run me down in the street, and the man I'd trusted with my life had walked away when I needed him most. I spent a year wondering if I'd ever walk again. I spent 4 more years fighting to prove what had happened to me. And I spent the last 2 years helping people like you find justice and healing. The audience was completely silent, hanging on her every word. The Naomi Richards Foundation has now helped 73 victims of hit-and-run accidents. We've connected them with investigators, lawyers, and medical resources. We've lobbied for stronger laws and better tracking systems. And we've created a community where victims don't have to suffer alone. Naomi paused, looking out at the faces in the crowd. Some were victims themselves, others were family members, and some were professionals who worked with injured people. But our work isn't done. Every year, thousands of people are hit by vehicles whose drivers flee the scene. Many of those victims never get justice. Their cases go cold. They're left to rebuild their lives while the people who hurt them face no consequences. We're changing that. One case at a time, one victim at a time. And I want to invite all of you to join this fight. Whether you're a survivor, a family member, or just someone who cares about justice, you can help. The applause when she finished was thunderous. People stood, some crying, many smiling. Naomi had become a symbol of survival and strength, and her foundation had become a beacon of hope. After her speech, dozens of people lined up to speak with her. She listened to each story, offered advice where she could, and provided contact information for the foundation's resources. One woman, paralyzed in a hit-and-run 6 months ago, grabbed Naomi's hand with tears streaming down her face. You give me hope, the woman said. Seeing you walk, seeing what you've built, it makes me believe I can survive this. You can, Naomi assured her. It won't be easy. There will be days when you want to give up. But if you keep fighting, you'll be amazed at what you can overcome. That evening, Naomi returned to her apartment, now a spacious 3-bedroom in a nice neighborhood. The foundation had become successful enough that she earned a modest salary from it, supplemented by speaking fees and the book deal she'd signed to tell her story. Terrence and Nia were both 15 now, thriving teenagers with busy social lives and dreams for their futures. Terrence wanted to study criminal justice, inspired by his mother's fight for accountability. Nia was interested in physical therapy, having watched Patricia help Naomi recover. They rarely asked about Trevor anymore. He was 2 years into his 15-year sentence, and neither child had visited him in prison. The court-ordered counseling had helped them process their father's betrayal and move forward. They knew they had a mother who loved them unconditionally, and that was enough. Jordan was in the kitchen cooking dinner when Naomi arrived home. They'd been together for 2 years now, taking things slowly but building something real. He'd moved in 6 months ago, fitting into their family naturally. How was the conference? He asked, kissing her hello. Good. Exhausting but good. We signed up 30 new volunteers and got commitments from 3 law firms to take pro bono cases. That's amazing. Jordan stirred the pasta sauce he was making. You're changing lives, Naomi. We're changing lives, she corrected. I couldn't do this without you, without the kids, without our whole team. They ate dinner as a family, laughing and talking about their days. It was normal, mundane even. And it was perfect. After the kids went to their rooms to do homework, Naomi and Jordan sat on the couch together, her feet in his lap. I've been thinking about something, Jordan said carefully. What's that? Our future. He took her hand. Naomi, these last 2 years with you have been the best of my life. Watching you build the foundation, seeing you with your kids, being part of this family, It's everything I didn't know I wanted. Naomi's heart started racing. She had a feeling she knew where this was going. Jordan slid off the couch and onto one knee. I'm not trying to replace what you lost. I know you'll always carry scars from what Trevor did. But I want to build a future with you. I want to wake up next to you every morning. I want to keep helping you change the world. I want to be there when Terrence and Nia graduate, when they get married, when they have kids of their own. He pulled out a small box and opened it to reveal a simple diamond ring. Naomi Richards, will you marry me? Tears streamed down Naomi's face. 7 years ago, she'd been abandoned by her husband, left paralyzed and alone. She thought she would never trust anyone again, never allow herself to be vulnerable, never risk loving someone who might hurt her. But Jordan wasn't Trevor. He'd proven that over and over through patience, kindness, and genuine love. Yes, Naomi whispered. Yes, I'll marry you. Jordan slipped the ring onto her finger and kissed her, and Naomi felt something she hadn't felt in years. Complete happiness. Not happiness despite what had happened to her, but happiness because of it. The struggle had made her stronger. The pain had taught her what mattered. The fight had shown her who she really was. They set a date for the following spring, a small ceremony with just close friends and family. Patricia would officiate, having gotten ordained online specifically for the occasion. Jamal would walk Naomi down the aisle since she had no father. Monica, Simone, and the core team from the foundation would attend. The months leading up to the wedding were busy. Naomi's book, Walking Again, a story of survival and justice, was published and became a bestseller. She did interviews on major news programs, sharing her story and raising awareness about hit-and-run victims. Gloria was denied parole at her first hearing. Trevor had 3 more years before he'd be eligible. Neither would be at the wedding, which was fine with Naomi. They were part of her past and she was focused on her future. The wedding day arrived on a beautiful spring morning. Naomi wore a simple white dress and walked down the aisle without assistance. Her legs were strong now, the muscles rebuilt through years of work. There was still some nerve damage that would never fully heal, but it didn't slow her down anymore. Terrence and Nia stood beside her as she married Jordan in Patricia's backyard, surrounded by everyone who'd helped her survive and rebuild. It wasn't a lavish ceremony, but it was perfect. In her vows, Naomi said, 7 years ago, I lost everything. My mobility, my family, my sense of safety. But losing everything taught me what really mattered. It taught me that I was stronger than I knew. It taught me that people like Patricia and Jamal and Monica would fight for me when I couldn't fight for myself. And it taught me that love isn't about pretty words and empty promises. It's about showing up, about staying, about building something real. She looked at Jordan with tears in her eyes. You showed up. You stayed. You helped me build something real. And I promise to spend the rest of my life showing you what that means to me. Jordan's vows were equally heartfelt, promising to stand beside her through whatever challenges came, to support her work, to love her children as his own. When they kissed, Terrence and Nia cheered, and Naomi felt complete in a way she'd never expected to feel again. The reception was small but joyful. They danced, ate Patricia's homemade barbecue, and celebrated not just a marriage but a new beginning. That night, as Naomi and Jordan drove to the small bed and breakfast where they'd spend their wedding night, Naomi looked at the ring on her finger and thought about everything that had led to this moment. Trevor and Gloria had tried to kill her. They'd shattered her spine, taken her children, and left her with nothing. They'd assumed she would disappear quietly, become another forgotten victim. But Naomi had refused to disappear. She'd clawed her way back from paralysis. She'd found the truth about what happened to her. She'd gotten justice. She'd reclaimed her children. And she'd built a life more meaningful than anything she'd had before. The foundation was thriving, helping dozens of new victims every month. Her book was inspiring people around the world. Her children were happy and healthy. And she'd found love again with a man who saw her strength rather than her scars. What are you thinking about? Jordan asked as they drove. I'm thinking that I survived. They tried to destroy me and I survived. More than survived. I thrived. You did. And I'm thinking that the best revenge isn't destruction or violence or even seeing them in prison. The best revenge is living well. Building something good out of something terrible. Showing them that they couldn't break me. Jordan squeezed her hand. They definitely couldn't break you. That night, lying in bed in the quiet room with Jordan asleep beside her, Naomi reflected on the entire journey. 7 years from the worst night of her life to this moment of perfect peace. She thought about the woman she'd been before the accident. That Naomi had been softer, more trusting, less aware of her own strength. That Naomi had accepted Trevor's excuses and his mother's coldness because she wanted to believe in her family. The new Naomi was harder in some ways, scarred by betrayal and pain. But she was also stronger, more confident, more certain of her worth. She knew now that she could survive anything. She'd proven it to herself and to the world. Trevor and Gloria would spend years in prison. When they got out, they would be old, broken by the system they tried to manipulate. They would have lost years of their lives while Naomi lived hers fully. That was justice. Not the legal verdict, though that mattered. But the fact that Naomi had won by refusing to stay destroyed. She'd won by learning to walk again. She'd won by building a foundation that helped others. She'd won by finding love and happiness despite everything they'd done. She was walking again in every sense of the word. Not just physically, though that was a miracle in itself. But walking forward into a future she'd built with her own determination and the support of people who truly cared about her. As she drifted off to sleep, Naomi thought about all the victims who reached out to the foundation. All the people who felt broken and hopeless after being hurt by someone else's cruelty. She thought about the message she wanted to send them. You can survive this. You can walk again, whatever that means for you. You can rebuild. You can thrive. And the people who hurt you? They don't get to win. They don't get to define your story. You do. Naomi Richards had defined her own story. She turned tragedy into triumph. She transformed pain into purpose. And she was just getting started. Years from now, long after Trevor and Gloria were forgotten, Naomi's foundation would still be helping victims. Her book would still be inspiring people. Her children would be telling their own children about the grandmother who refused to stay broken. That was her legacy. Not the paralysis or the betrayal or the trial. Her legacy was strength, survival, and the unshakable belief that no matter how dark things got, you could always find your way back to the light. She'd walked out of the darkness. She'd walked away from the people who tried to destroy her. She'd walked into a new life filled with love, purpose, and joy.